Hey everybody, it's Dan, and today we're going to look at some very goofy comics. I reread these a few weeks ago, so let's see how much I remember. These are the beginning of a run by J.M. DeMatteis on Spectacular Spider-Man. It features the art of Sal Buscema, but he was drawing Spectacular Spider-Man for a long time before and after DeMatteis uh, left the book. So, or came on and left the book. So, anyway, we have the Harry Osborn Green Goblin. This is a pretty strong cover. I always thought Buscema had a really strong Green Goblin because he can just distort and exaggerate the features so much. Like this almost looks like it's like Batmite's eyes put onto the Joker's silhouette. It's really strong. It works. Even this exhaust that kind of does just look like popcorn. Like it's pretty good. So yeah, so I'm mostly here for Sal Buscema, but the DeMatteis stuff, there's going to be some fun, kitschy uh, ticks that we can point out that are they're fun. So this is early '90s, 1991. So of course you got to have a Capri Sun ad. Anybody who grew up in the '90s probably drank a lot of Capri Sun. I always remember that this is definitely an older package than I remember, but they had the super sharp straws, and you like stab like this part with it, and it was always easier to drink it that way than the way that you were supposed to drink it. Um, was there some reason you weren't supposed to do that? I don't know. I'm still alive. Um, so yeah, so Dark Knight Returns has come out. Why am I pointing that out? Because this is such a Dark Knight Returns page layout, and this doesn't look like the stuff that came before it. Buscema, I think, is taking a lot of cues from DeMatteis, and apparently must have been taking a decent number of cues from Gary Conway too, because the pages. Buscema must stick to scripts pretty tightly, which he works really quickly, or worked really quickly. Um, and yeah, so we have our. I don't know if this is a first appearance of Dr. Ashley Kafka, but it's one of the first Dr. Kafka's. If you don't know who Kafka is, go look it up. Yeah, and Vermin is kind of a weird. He's like a creature that was created by Baron Zemo during the Evolutionary War, and he's just like this psycho dude who kind of looks like a rat, but I guess he's got super strength. And he kind of fits with that like things you kind of don't want in your house theme. You don't want spiders in your house, and you definitely don't want vermin. And yeah, we have this like washed out. I guess it's supposed to be security camera footage. Even rounding out the panels feels a lot like those TV commentary sequences in Dark Knight Returns. So yeah, so Vermin's having a flashback to when he was a kid. That's what he used to look like. Um, lots of stuff with photo. This almost feels like I like that Oliver Stone JFK movie because he keeps cutting between like, here's a flashback, here's a videotape, here's a clipped photographs, and there's two missing photographs on there because otherwise, I think it would be kind of mean to make Sal Buscema like draw this many figures on one page. But visually, it looks nice. It flows well. I remember this reading pretty well. Um, And I think like Buscema, a lot of my why I'm drawn to Buscema is that his figures and his faces especially, they look kind of gnarled and super anxious in the manner of a Steve Ditko, and in a way that I don't think most other Spider-Man artists draw these characters. Like, Buscema almost makes this feel like a horror comic. Um, and we get some strong lettering as always from Rick Parker. I'm just looking at the credits down here. Bob Sharon doing the colors. I remember the colors being pretty good. I never had any of these Star Trek cards, and I don't know that I would want them. Um, he's fighting a ghost. You know, I like that he leans into just like whatever the fuck Osborn's hair is, right? I think did Ditko or Romita come up with that? I can't remember if he looks like that in his first appearance in the Ditko run. It just looks weird no matter what, and this just looks like two grilled steaks on his head, but it just makes it that much less comfortable to look at. And we got Harry in some action. We get him fighting Spider-Man, so you get an action sequence in there without having to, bring the characters together just yet. I feel like, oh yeah, Jim Lee ad for the Punisher Game Boy game. This ad was probably better than the game, if I had to guess. And Buscema is really good, like a lot of other really fast artists, at contorting figures. Because if you have like the basic motion in place well enough, you can kind of like fudge a lot of the rest of it. And he does reuse certain action sequences. Like, I'm pretty sure I've seen this 3-panel sequence with the punching somewhere before, maybe not staggered across the page like that. um Harry Osborn just looks like such a little worm in these comics. And then Spider-Man kills Norman Osborn in Harry's dream, and tears apart the. It almost looks like Beavis and Butthead there. He's just tearing apart the photo album. Harry's not doing so hot. He's been kind of having issues with thinking that he's. Well, I mean, he is the Green Goblin now, but he's just not. He's a Green Goblin for the '90s. He's like more kind of mentally unwell than evil. Um, Spider-Man's just hanging out at a cemetery because that's what dude does, and get some good swinging in there. I think Buscema usually does some good like filler Spidey swinging around thinking about stuff pages. Um, I wonder if this is kind of like this middle panel. I feel like I don't see this in earlier Buscema. Kind of open panel with the very large figure, and kind of wonder if that's a McFarlane influence. Really strong yellow silhouette there. I really like how that looks. And here we have Vermin hanging out with some kid. I can't remember. I don't think that's just him. I think that is actually like a kid. Cut back to the video stuff. Dr. Kafka hugs Vermin. I think DeMatteis kind of gets that a lot of the villain origin stories in the early '60s Marvel comics are, they're very New Deal politics, right? Like, most of the evil people are just like misunderstood or in desperate circumstances, except for the Green Goblin. I mean, there's like some of them that are really just like little bastards, but Marvel more than DC to a large extent popularizes that idea that like the villain has to have a defined tragic backstory. Dungeons and Dragons. I never see these shirts anywhere. If anyone ordered one of these shirts, let me know. Because, like, that Marvel one's pretty sweet. Is that Sam Keith Wolverine? That's pretty cool. Um, the placement of the graphics looks a little goofy, but I don't know. I saw this ad so many times reading comics as a kid that it would just be interesting to see the actual objects. So we have a rat who's kind of a metaphor for, or it's a mouse. We have a mouse who's sort of like vermin. He seems threatening, but then he makes friends with Dr. Kafka. Back when Mile High Comics, back when the dude who owned Mile High Comics actually wanted to sell a lot of his comics, 50 cents each, dollar each. Um, I mean, they still have a lot of comics posted for sale, but like, they're not at prices that make me think that guy actually wants to sell any of the stuff. Which, I mean, he can do what he wants. It's a free country. Um, Weird to spend 6 panels on a sleeping child. But this is a quieter moment that I don't think would have happened in the earlier Gary Conway run on the title. Science Fiction Book Club. I probably have a lot of these books in the store. And yeah, Harry's going out to do something. This mirrors the earlier page. Kind of like parts of Watchmen. Has the three-tiered grid. And Liz's hair is kind of green. It looks kind of like Doc Samson's hair in the Hulk comics. And yeah, and he does he does a good job of just kind of very slowly pulling the camera out to make like not quite just stationary like movement in front of a flat background kind of storytelling, but like here, like the camera's pulling in here. Excuse me. Yeah. So we see the entire skylight on the building. Um, Pulls in a little bit, pulls in a little bit more. Then when it goes stationary at the bottom, it means more, and it emphasizes the movement of the Green Goblin silhouette, like there and there. Big splash page, probably an apology for those earlier 9-12 panel pages. Bullpen bulletins. You get Iceman doing some juggling. Anybody remember the coolometer? Like, I always remember reading these, and I wouldn't know what most of the things they were listing were. And I would just kind of scrutinize them, but this was like pre-internet being everywhere, like before you could really get a lot of this information on the internet. I don't even know if we had a computer when I would have read most of these spectacular Spider-Man comics. But yeah, so cool is the Infinity Gauntlet. You got to show the product. Penn and Teller, okay. Bare Knees, The Rocketeer. That's kind of interesting. They're giving like a shout out to a competitor's comic. Or maybe they don't really see Pacific Comics as a competitor. Or was Rocketeer would have been with like Kitchen Sink, I think, by that point. Supermodel Claudia Schiffer going down. Middle of the road between cool and uncool. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Flash TV show, Hannibal Lecter, Geographic undesirability in Twin Peaks towards the bottom. Twin Peaks was on its last legs by then. And then at the very bottom, uncool, ponytails on men, Regis and Kathy Lee, Vanilla Ice, Steven Seagal. So we knew about Vanilla Ice and Steven Seagal earlier than I think a lot of people let on. Well, I think everybody always kind of knew that Vanilla Ice was kind of a joke, but here's like Grit catalog ad. Like this feels very 70s, and these kinds of ads would start getting phased out of the comics a few years after this because digital production and printing techniques. And Green Goblin takes out Spider-Man with some laughing gas, pulls off the mask, and I think Harry knew who Spider-Man was at this point, so this is more sort of a dramatic capturing sequence. Notice how he looks a lot more like Norman Osborn than he did at the beginning of the comic. That's a nice subtle touch. And Buscema lets the colorist do a lot of the work, right? Like we establish it's a roof. This doesn't even have like a horizon line because I guess like the angle Spider-Man would be blocking it. And the position of the figures tells us everything about the background. Strong cartooning. And yeah, here's subscription. You could subscribe to Marvel Fanfare for $27. Dang, that's a lot. But the normal ones, you could get $12 shipped to your house. Pretty sweet. And then if you got three subscriptions, it would be $24, and you get 36 comics. That's not a bad deal. Although I did have a subscription very briefly. I want to say it was to Ultimate Spider-Man. It's towards the end of when they were doing subscriptions. And subscription books would not. They would come kind of like taco folded a lot of the time, which was unfortunate. I had a bunch of these cards. These cards were cool. Maybe we'll look at those at some point later. So next video we'll cover 181. I gotta get ready for work, but this has been the Funny Pages. I'm Dan, and come check out my store, Silver Factory Books and Records. We're in sunny, scenic Ballston Spa, New York. And yeah, I'll see you in the funny papers.